Good evening, I'm Fana Shea and you're tuning into AWANI tonight. UMNO President Dato' Sri Ahmad Zaid Hamidi has hinted that the party internal elections might happen earlier than expected. He also said it will be up to party delegates to decide if the top two party positions should be up for grabs, including his own. He said in an online interview for NR Channel TV that there is no need to wait for the 6-month deadline to hold internal elections. As GE15 was held in November, the 6-month period for when UMNO is due to hold its party polls would be in May 2023. The Registrar of Societies, ROS, earlier this year allowed UMNO to amend its constitution to enable internal elections to happen not more than 6 months after general elections. Zaid also added that the divisional and central leadership elections would be held at the same time. Although Zaid said he would leave it up to UMNO delegates to decide on the contesting of the two top posts, its Secretary General, Dato' Sri Ahmad Maslan, said there is no decision yet on whether it would be contested. This will be decided at a party Supreme Council meeting on January 12, 2023. The UMNO General Assembly is scheduled on January 11 to January 14. The government has no plans to fix air ticket prices as it could negatively affect passengers. Transport Minister Anthony Loke said capping flight tickets will also adversely affect the airlines since air ticket prices are dynamic in nature. Loke expressed concerns that airlines will reduce their capacities and offer fewer flights if price ceilings are introduced to make up for their losses. He said airlines are encouraged to add more flights, especially during the festive season, so prices can be more affordable. Loke said the government is ready to help any airlines who reduce or fix their ticket prices. Meanwhile, the Health Ministry will be expanding the use of the MySejahtera application for appointments at government hospitals and clinics. Its Minister, Dr. Zalia Mustafa, said the move will improve service efficiency as well as prevent overcrowding and long wait times.
She said appointments can be made through MySejahtera for 673 healthcare clinics, and this will gradually be expanded to more hospitals and clinics. 8 services will be included in the appointment system, namely outpatient treatment, National Health Screening Initiative, Baka B40 Health Screening, and pre-employment or pre-study health screening. Appointment dates for 2023 may be set through MySejahtera beginning today. They can be cancelled or changed through the app. While for emergency cases, people can go straight to the primary health facility without having to make an appointment first. On Monday, Zaleha said the Health Ministry had begun drawing up plans to resolve the issue of overcrowding at emergency and trauma departments to improve services to the people.
A government MP argued that the clause in the Memorandum of Understanding for the current administration that specifies support to the Prime Minister and government is democratic and in line with the law. Selayang MP William Leong was responding to concerns raised by the Malaysian Bar on the clause.
Leong, who was involved in drafting the MOU signed by coalition parties, said the issue centers on Clause 4 of the provision. The Malaysian Bar said Clause 4 poses a legal problem as it goes against the intention of the anti-party hopping law. The clause requires all political parties and MPs who have signed it to vote in support of the Prime Minister in votes of confidence and other matters pertaining government legitimacy. Failure or refusal to vote in support would lead to an MP's breach of individual responsibility to the party. This also means the MP resigned or ceased to be an MP under Article 49A1 of the Federal Constitution, triggering a by-election. Leong highlighted that an MP, in exercising their rights to vote according to their conscience, has to balance the need to ensure Parliament can carry out its work. Therefore, he called the Bar's concern that Clause 4 sacrifices democratic practices and the rule of law on the altar of political stability is unwarranted. He said an MP is bound to his party constitution and is liable to be disciplined according to its terms. Leong also stressed that Clause 4 only applies in motion of confidences, supply bills and procedural motions having effect on government legitimacy. Article 49A is a new amendment to the Federal Constitution to overcome party hopping issues. The law was gazetted on September 6 this year.
The government has deferred the implementation of the 1,500 ringgit minimum wage for companies with fewer than 5 workers to July, as opposed to January 1st next year. Malaysian Trades Union Congress MTUC President Effendi Abdul Ghani said this is unfair to the workers who has been waiting for this pay rise to help with the high cost of living.
We've not been informed. I think there's no engagement with the MTUC regarding on the second postponement for this Employment Act. And I think the postponement until July is too long. I think it's very too long. Then against our stand, we still urge the governments to implement the Employment Acts for the SME company as soon as possible. Because otherwise, I think it will demoralize the workers in the SME industry. And second things, in our opinion, that the announcement will, I think they will kill the industry of the SME because the cost of living is very, very high today, as you know that. That's why I give an example that if you have differentiate the SME company less than 5 or 5, then more than 5, and I think we have different about 300 ringgit. I think it's unfair if they are work in the city that is we have in same building. They have different company, but they have different salary. And at the same time, they also the expenses, the cost of living also seems they are still buying the same price. They also still buy the fuels the same price, but they have different salary. I think this is thing that I think is not healthy for our country.
Effendi said businesses had gone through several increases in minimum wage before and should be more prepared to implement the new rate.
We not implement this minimum wages for this year. We already started implement this minimum wage since 2013 or 14. We already implement from 100 ringgit, 1,000, 1,002, and until 1,005 now. There's reasons that are not already, I think it's not should be become the more powerful reason for them, because I think they should implement these minimum wages and the minimum wage, and in the same time I think the government can monitor, because in between we implement the minimum wage, I think you can see that of course you can see that if any SME company less than 5 workers that they cannot survive, this is the right time now the government to assist them.
We will go for a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Diperkaya dengan kebaikan susu, diperkaya dengan tenaga dari malt. Kebaikan berganda dari susu UHT dengan malt marigold.
As a bank, it's what drives us to do right by you.
Sama-sama kita melangkah, bergembira seisi keluarga. Malaysia penuh panorama indah, berbilang budaya Malaysia. Cuti-cuti Malaysia.
Welcome back. More countries are stepping up control on people arriving from China in response to a surge of infections there. This as China prepares to reopen borders in early January. Taiwan is the latest to announce that it will require travelers from China to show a negative COVID-19 test on arrival, following in the footsteps of Japan and India. The measures to run for a month starting from January 1st do not include those arriving from Hong Kong or Macau. The majority of those affected will be Taiwanese citizens who live and work in China, as Beijing banned Chinese tourists from visiting the island in 2019. Meanwhile, the US is considering new precautions for people traveling from China amid questions about the transparency of data China is reporting about the virus. Singapore, however, announced that there is no change to its COVID-19 rules for travelers and work pass holders arriving from China. On Wednesday, China said that it will resume issuing ordinary visas and passports, setting up a potential flood of millions of Chinese going abroad for next month's Chinese New Year holiday.
Meanwhile, international travelers to Hong Kong will no longer need to do a mandatory COVID-19 PCR test on arrival. Its leader John Lee announced that a vaccine pass required to enter most venues would also be scrapped. Mask-wearing rules, however, will remain. The announcements come after Lee said on Saturday that Hong Kong would reopen its borders with mainland China by mid-January. Hong Kong has for nearly 3 years largely followed China's lead in tackling the virus.
In other news, the UN Security Council has denounced the Taliban government policies targeting women and girls in Afghanistan. The Taliban have banned women from attending university and working for NGOs within the last week, decisions that have been viewed as a systematic clampdown on women's rights and participation in Afghan society. In a statement, the 15-member Security Council said it was deeply alarmed by the increasing restrictions on women's education and urged the Taliban to reopen schools. The ban on female humanitarian workers, it added, would also have a significant and immediate impact for humanitarian operations in the country, including for the UN. At least 5 top NGOs halted work in Afghanistan after women were banned from working for them by the Taliban government. Since seizing back control of the country last year, the Taliban have steadily restricted women's rights, despite promising their rule would be softer than the regime seen in the 1990s. Besides the bans on NGO workers and female university students, secondary schools for girls remain closed in most provinces. Women have also been prevented from entering parks and gyms, among other public places. Over in Philippines, the death toll from floods has risen to 25 on Wednesday. Rescue teams across 9 provinces are racing against time to locate 26 others missing following heavy rain that submerged homes and villages over the weekend. The floods have subsided in many of the affected areas, but State Weather Agency forecasts moderate rains to continue in central and southern areas until Thursday. The rain-induced floods and landslides are unlike previous disasters in the Philippines, which are typically triggered by more severe typhoons and tropical storms. The National Disaster Agency said relief efforts were underway to help people in areas hit hard by the flooding, as more than 81,000 people sheltered in evacuation centers. The U.S. Supreme Court will keep in place for now a border policy that blocked thousands of people from crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. The controversial ruling, invoked under Donald Trump's administration in response to COVID-19, had allowed the U.S. to quickly expel migrants and asylum seekers on public health grounds. The Title 42 policy was originally due to expire on December 21st. But 2 days before the deadline, Chief Supreme Court Justice John Roberts blocked its termination, following an emergency appeal from some Republican-led states who had asked for the policy to remain in place. On Tuesday, the Supreme Court voted 5-4 to extend the temporary stay. More than 2.4 million people have been expelled from the U.S. since the policy was enacted in March 2020. President Joe Biden said his administration would comply with the ruling, but called for reform of immigration policy. However, critics say the decision to uphold the controversial policy has stemmed off a political crisis for Biden's administration, as thousands of migrants waited at the southern border in expectation the policy was about to end. An end to the policy will lead to an influx of migrants that the government isn't well equipped to serve. More than 200 vehicles were involved in a major crash in the central Chinese city of Zhengzhou due to extremely foggy conditions. 1 person was killed in the incident.
Visuals on social media show cars and trucks crumpled and piled on top of each other on a bridge, a major overpass across the Yellow River connecting Zhengzhou and neighboring Xinxiang. State media reported that many of the injured were trapped in their vehicles, and the fire department sent 11 fire trucks to help. According to the local meteorological service, visibility in multiple areas in Zhengzhou was less than 500 meters and 200 meters in some places in the morning.
That is all we have for you on Awani Tonight. I'm Fana Sheh. Thank you so much for watching.